All right. Hey, everyone out there. We got on here, hop on, and I have a special guest here with me. His name is Ron Walker, and he's from over on the west side of Michigan and like Grand Rapids area. So I'm from the Metro Detroit area, and it's really really good to have somebody come in there from a different part of the area and see where they're at, see what they're doing, see what their area is like, and see their perspective. He's been doing it for a lot longer than I have, and so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna bring him on. And by the way, keep in mind any questions you want to ask me or Ron, put them in the chat. We're going to be live this whole time, probably going for about an hour or however the flow goes, and then just kind of putting it out there. So keep your questions coming in the chat, and we'll go ahead and answer them. All right. How's it going, Ron?
It's going freaking awesome, Randy. How are you?
Oh my God, that's awesome, man. I'm happy to have you. And I'm just getting things set up here on my phone while I can see it, because in my group, for some reason on here, I can't, when I see the comments, they don't come through with the person's name. So I kind of have to have it pulled up on
Yeah,
my
you
phone.
go back and forth so we can call them out. Well, I am. I
Exactly.
appreciate you bringing me on, man. I'm excited to just have a conversation about real estate. This is what I do.
All
It's what I
right.
do every day, right? Just
Yeah, most definitely.
turning deals, talking to people, building relationships. That's what it's about, man.
Oh yeah. So what I wanted to do is we wanted to see how did you get your start in this? When did you get it? What brought you to real estate in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll I want to start at the beginning.
Yep.
Like what made you choose real estate, and what
So
was your entry into it?
yeah. So in the Star Wars movies where Obi-Wan Kenobi comes to Luke Skywalker in the first movie, and he's like, you got to come with me, and Luke Skywalker's like, nah, I'm good, bro. I'm gonna stay at home, right? He wants to do it and go. That was my interaction with entrepreneurship, and
Okay.
and the way that kind of played out was I grew up under my dad was an entrepreneur. Okay, so my dad owned an asphalt maintenance company, and I grew up sleeping on the paver, and I there was a lot of stuff that happened. There was a lot of craziness being an entrepreneur and the way kind of it was run, and I just didn't want anything to do with it. So, which is funny because when I was 16, I actually approached my dad for seal coating, and I was like, "Hey, can I have half the jobs if I find them and do it? I want half to work if I source it." And so I kind of had a little entrepreneur in my blood there. But I moved to Texas from Alaska, and I got a job at a regular job at Sprint, the phone company. And, I was 13 making $15 an hour. Okay.
Okay.
I got a job at Sprint. I am 19 years old and I'm making $8.75 an hour plus commission, right? It was the lowest I had ever been paid my entire life. And I got a real wake up call, right? I'm working a 40-hour week for like no money. And very quickly in about a year and a half, I worked my way up to the manager position. I was the youngest manager in Dallas-Fort Worth. And from that time, once I got there, I was also the lowest paid because I was not only the youngest, but I worked my way up from $8 an hour, right? $8.75 or whatever. And at that time I got married and we're having our first kid in the way. And I was like, man, I need to make some more money. Like things are all right, but this, I have bigger goals, right? I was making more at 15 than I'm making now. So I left that job and I got a job at JP Morgan Chase. I was just a private banker, the guys you see that sell you a credit card when you walk into the bank. And about 8 months, I got promoted to the private client division, and we were managing money between $250,000 and $10 million. And so how I got into real estate is one of my clients that I'd helped for quite a while, developed a relationship with him, one day did a $3 million deposit.
And I'm like, dude, how do you make $3 million deposits? This doesn't make any sense. And Randy, I called him, and he always answered my phone call. And I said, hey man, like, what do you do? Like, seriously, like, what do you do? Like, you just made a $3 million deposit, right? I mean, I was more, cordial than that, but that was the essence of it. And he's like, well, I'm in real estate, and we just flipped an apartment complex.
Okay.
And he's like, I've been doing this since the 80s, blah, blah, blah. I gave his spiel, and he let me take him out to lunch. And so we started talking. He pointed me to a group called Lifestyles Unlimited in Dallas, Texas. And I joined. Well, I didn't join, but I went to one of their free seminars. And one of the guys gets up on stage. And as he's on stage, they're talking about rental properties. That's their main gig. And he gets up on stage and he says, I decided not to keep this house. So I wholesaled it and I made $18,000 in 3 hours. I'm like, yo, if this dude can make 18 grand in 3 hours, like, what am I doing? Right? Like, this is nuts.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what the freaking heck is going on? So that was my introduction to wholesaling. I emailed the guy. He was kind enough to respond to me. And he pointed me to a guy out of Arizona called Sean Terry. I got Sean Terry's free Kindle book back in late 2012. And I ended up going through one of Sean Terry's webinars. I bought his course for $2,000. And from there, it took me 3 months. I did my first deal off direct mail, and the rest is history, man. So that's my journey up into real estate.
Wow. Now that is crazy because $18,000, like, that is just nuts.
Right. Okay. Well, when you think about it, it's like, wait a minute, I'm working, a quarter of the year for that amount of money, right? At that time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm what are you talking about, bro? That's what I was thinking. I was like, this is nuts. So as I'm jumping in, and at that time I was making pretty good money at Chase. I wasn't no chump, right? I wasn't making minimum wage, but what was inside of me is, like, at that time, I think I had my second child. My son was just born. And there was this kind of inner fire in me that's like, man, life has got to be more than this climb up to $120,000, $150,000 a year. There's got to be more than this. I got to be able to experience more life. There's more that I can contribute. And that journey just kind of led me to where I was just seeking opportunity, right? Like, I was looking for it. I was seeking it. And when I finally bought that course and I spent more money on marketing, Randy, I did my first deal. They sent me a check in the mail, the title company, and that was for $3,000. And I didn't quit my job at that point. I didn't just jump off the bandwagon, but that $3,000 changed my life. And it changed my life because it proved to me that my actions, like, I could be the captain of my own fate, right? Like, I could do it from beginning to end. I didn't need anybody. Yeah. And that since then has only grown in the sense of, there's a vision, there's a goal, there's a trajectory, and I can bring people along that journey with me to accomplish all our goals and desires. And so, man, real estate is just a fantastic way of doing that. It's not easy. I like to say it's the simplest hard thing you will ever do. But it can totally create the life of freedom you want. I've been to Ireland 3 times. 3 times. 2 of those times for over 3 months. One was during COVID. We have traveled all over Europe and been able to do deals while I was traveling, right, remotely from over there. And so I would never have been able to do that if it wasn't for real estate. And I owe all of it to this industry, and I love seeing people just jump in and succeed and create that system that provides that freedom for them.
And that's the thing, like, your first deal is not going to be life-changing money. And if it is, more power to you. I'm happy for you.
Right.
It wasn't for me. It wasn't for you. But what it is it's a proof of concept. Okay. I repeatedly say this. My first deal was was $1,333. Okay. $1,333. I broke even because it took me 4 months to make that happen. Doing it part-time because
Yep.
I have a day job.
Yep.
Okay. And again, $3,000 is not life-changing money, but it is a proof of concept. And as soon as you got it, be like, I can do this again, and again.
Well, what happens, Randy, is once you get that proof of concept, like you're saying, it proves it to yourself, not only that you can do it, that it's not a scam, and that the elite don't need to do it, that's actually fairly simple, right?
Yeah.
And that you're providing value. You know, there's this aspect where when you start doing things and operating in a capacity that you're not really familiar with, you kind of feel weird. You're like, oh, is this person going to think this is weird that I'm asking them this question? And it might be completely normal to them. But to you, you're like, so do you want to buy this deal? And they're like, dude, what do you got? Like, let me take a look at it. And you're like, well, this, here's the numbers, blah, blah. It's like, dang, I should ask for 20 grand more. Like that dude would have bought it. Right. And it's this element of you're stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You're doing a deal. And then it's like, boom, dang, this is real. And then the next time you get more comfortable, you get more confident, you feel better about the process. And you're able to operate a little bit more in the industry. And each time you do that, it builds the confidence in you. And I like to say real estate's a mental game. The more confidence you have, the more money you can make.
100% agree. Every single deal that I've done, I've learned something from, whether it be through the process, whether it be how to handle a seller, whether it be how to handle a buyer. Any of that process, every single deal, I've learned something from. So I wanted to ask you real quick. Now, before we go into what you're doing now, is there a deal that how should I put this? A nightmare of a deal. I want to bring that in, and then what is either the best deal that you've done or the most memorable deal? So we'll do two ends: the nightmare and the best or more memorable. It doesn't have to be the best; to be the more memorable. So
probably the nightmare deal that I did was probably actually one I just did recently. So I moved up to Grand Rapids from Dallas, Texas 3 years ago in 2019. And, coming from Dallas to here was quite a shock for me in the types of houses that are available. In Dallas, there's slabs everywhere. Everything's brick. Foundation problems are not a big deal. You put in a foundation budget to everything. You just put a couple piers in and you adjust it. When I moved up here, the houses were different, right? I mean, I have a house right now. It was built in like 1883. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't see that kind of stuff in Texas.
Right.
And so getting into this market was actually quite challenging. You think, I've been doing this for, at that point, 7 years. When I jump up in here, it's going to take off. It was not like that for me. As a matter of fact, I lost like that first year just by marketing and just, from stuff and not doing the deals and not understanding and not having the buyer connection. I lost like 60 grand that first year. And part of that was getting to these old houses that aren't structurally sound, right? That you have to come in, gut it, but then you have to re-level the entire house, right? You got to get it structurally solid first and then build up from there. Well, that takes quite a bit of expertise. It's actually quite a bit harder than, say, even a new build. And a lot of that stuff wasn't there in Texas. And a lot of my rehabs in Texas were very cosmetically oriented. We might have ripped out walls and repositioned stuff, but it was different. It was easier. And so I bought a house and we rehabbed like the whole house. My budget was $70,000. And dude, we rehabbed the whole house and it wasn't right. And so I had to bring in another guy I had to
basically put that crew off. I fired half of them. I kept the other half. And I had to bring in another guy who was an expert, and he came in and salvaged the project. By the time we were all said and done, luckily I was expecting to make about $100,000 on that property, on that flip, because I bought it right. After everything was said and done, I only made about 20,000, and it took me like 10 months. And that was such a headache, because every time we came in, it was like another thing, right? Dude, we're nearly done, and the guy comes in, he puts his hand on the drywall, and his hand goes through the drywall. And it was like, it's like, what the freaking heck is this? It's like, that was one of the walls we didn't fix. And it's like, dude, all this. So we had to like repair it. Dude, it was awful. And so just when you talk about just money sinking into a project, that happened. But what I learned from that, because that stuff might happen to you, right? You hear people who lose a lot of money. Luckily, I didn't lose money on that deal. But what I learned from that is due diligence. You do not want to skimp on due diligence. And one of the negatives of starting as a wholesaler is you don't really focus on due diligence and all of the intricacies of making money. And when you buy a real estate deal, Randy, we should constantly be looking at what are the possible ways for us to make money on this deal, right? How can this deal make the most money? Rental, land contract, creative, fix and flip, wholesale, right? When we get a deal, we should be looking at all the different options. Well, what happens is if you're just wholesaling them most of the time, you don't get really good at due diligence. You don't become that contractor. You don't need to be, but you do need some experts on your team to walk 100%. You through it. And so that was my biggest learning. And I learned more about construction and that deal than I had learned in 7 years in investing, Randy. Like I learned how to foundationally rebuild it. I learned how to shore a foundation. I learned how to deal with water problems. I learned the structural side. I learned how to re-level each individual floor. Right. I learned the whole process because I was very hands-on once we had to restart.
Right.
And
well, you have to be, because you're watching every penny. You're like,
Well, because what happens is, I think a buddy of ours, TC, he likes to say, you can go broke flipping houses, and you can go broke flipping profitable houses. And it's because, man, everything adds up, right? $1,000 here, $500 here, $300 there, $200 there. The guy goes to Home Depot 10 times in 1 week. You got the gas. All of that stuff adds up. So that was, still, that's probably my biggest nightmare of a deal. I got another one, but that's probably my biggest one.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, honestly, you learn from your mistakes. You learn from the construction. And one of the best things that I've done, it's not a mistake by any means, but I went through this renovation with my house, and we gutted the kitchen down to when we did some reframing, we rearranged everything, took out a wall. And instead of doing the smart thing where you bring a general contractor in, they do it all for you. No. I was like, I can do that. But I did do something smart. And I have a buddy of mine who is a contractor. And I said, you tell me what to do. I'll pay you for some of your time. Now, obviously, I can't pay you what I would normally pay you if I were to hire you. But give me a deal. You tell me what to do. You're not lifting a finger. I'm doing all the work. And he did. So I got through all the framing. He taught me how to plumb, all of that. With the electrical, I had a buddy of mine who's an electrician and gave me a really good deal, and he does it for a living. So I'm like, you take care of that. And I'm asking him questions the whole time and doing all that. It helped my wholesale game.
Absolutely.
Okay. I may have not spent as much time on doing wholesaling because I was doing all of that. But just like you learn construction there, I learn true costs of things here. And I'm like, okay, planning, got to get this done, got to get that done, got to, going through all the whole stages and everything. And I'm like, okay, I see how much things cost. You know, I had to hire subs. You know, I see how much that costs. Yeah, it was crazy.
Dude, the reason why that is so key is as a wholesaler or as someone who buys creatively or just a real estate investor in general, as an opportunity seeker, if you know how to do the due diligence on these deals, you're able to speak to your investors and your partners in a way and with confidence that can either show them the opportunity and not be taken advantage of to sell it too low, and or not accidentally sell something to somebody that's going to destroy them.
Yeah.
And so, because both of those are terrible outcomes. It used to be, I think it was in 2015, I heard it from a guy. He said, you know, I want to sell to all the new guys because they buy at the highest. Well, that's amazing from a transactional standpoint, as long as they can make money, right? If their goal is just to make a $20,000 nugget, then that's cool, right? That's their strategy. That's what they want. Or if they want to hold this deal long term and turn it into a turnkey, you know, rental because they're a doctor or whatever, that's cool. But if you're just selling to a newbie and those people lose money and you're not looking out for them, that's not really cool. No. At least not for me, right?
No,
And so I find that the more that we can understand not just our exit strategies, but the entire process through the deal, from what is it worth? What does the property need? What does it need in different strategies, right? Because you don't have to fully fix it up, right? You can do a light rehab. You can just do a trash out. You can do a full renovation. You can do a full renovation up a little bit, right? You can do an Airbnb and what it takes to stage it. Like, all of those factors help you understand how this property can make the most money. And then you can communicate that to your investor on the flip
100%.
side. I'll give you an example. You asked me about my most profitable deal.
Yeah.
This wasn't my most profitable deal. It was one of them. But I bought a duplex off of Buckner and Casa Linda in Dallas, Texas. Okay. It was actually in Garland, and it was right across the street from the Chase that I first got my job at. And I walked.
That's got to be a socket.
Yeah, it was right across the street, bro. And so I met this lady there who had inherited the property, and it was a duplex. And we walked through it. We talked. She wanted, I think, I believe she wanted 204. No, I think she wanted 215, and I contracted it for 199. Okay. Yeah, that's right. I contracted it for 199. Well, I turned around and I called a buddy of mine who was in the Chinese community. So he said, he's like, dude, those houses can be turned into single family. And my China investors, they don't care about equity. They're just pulling their money from China and putting it into US assets. So let me see what I can do. So literally like 5 hours later, he walked through the house. He called me later that night, and he didn't know what my price was. But I was like, hey, man, what can you do? He's like, could you accept an offer for 304? I was like, yeah, I can do that. Let's do that. And
are you hold on, stop real quick. At this point, were you trying not to jump for joy?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you got to have a poker face, right?
Okay.
And absolutely. And that's where it's like, if someone says something that you just completely, you just pause for a second. It's like, yeah, I can do that. You know, I put it together. I'm getting ready to assign it. And I realized, you know, I don't want to assign this deal. I want to do a double close. And so
100%.
I wrote another contract. I signed the contract with him. And then what I did is I went to the title company. I went back to the seller, and I did. So I didn't actually bring the whole money to the table because I had a couple of rehabs going on at the time. I didn't have the money in my bank account to close. And so what I did was I did a 2-day note with the seller. So the seller signed at closing basically a form that said she was going to hold her proceeds back for essentially 2 days. And what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to close on this transaction and then pay off that note. And I ended up double closing that deal. And I think netted after everything was said and done, I got like I think I got 101 on that deal. But what I learned from it, and why it was so memorable, is because different buyers have different criteria, right? Hedge fund buyers have different criteria than your fix and flipper. Mm-hmm. People who are buy and holding have different criteria. I sold another deal in Fort Worth. I sold it at like 98 cents on the dollar as a wholesale deal to a private investor. And I was like, why would this guy buy it? And I sent it out and I had like a whole bunch of people come. Well, what happened was, and I didn't realize, is that the rental, I don't remember what the purchase price was, but the rental rate in that area was like, it ended up being like a 3.5% rental rate, when normally it's like a 1.2 to 1.5. Yeah. And so I got, I'm signing this deal. I'm thinking I'm going to make like $15,000, $18,000. And all of a sudden I get an offer for one of the investors. He's like, I'll buy it here. And I'm like, okay. And then another guy's like, I'll buy it here. And all of a sudden I'm looking at like a $42,000 assignment fee. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why? Yeah. And I look back into it and I found out that the rents were so high in this area that I wasn't familiar with. And so your rental guys have different criteria. Your guys who buy on terms have different criteria. So that deal really opened my mind to that, because I didn't understand why someone would pay so much. And what I realized is people will pay what they'll pay for their own reasons. And I don't need to understand it. I just need to know the details of the property and the different ways it will fit, and then throw it in front of different people and see what they're willing to buy.
Right. So on that deal, how did you present it to your buyers? How did you put it out there? Did you put a price on it, or did you say, come back at me with what you
on that deal, I called a buddy of mine that I was in relationship with. He was an agent, and he was in the Chinese community.
No, not that deal. I'm not talking about the one that was the 3.5% rental rate.
Oh yeah. So that one, so that was in 2014, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that was late 2014. Maybe it was 2015. Anyway, that deal. So the way I've done it is we had a pretty big buyers list. We had an email list of about 40,000 emails in DFW. And so we were blasting out emails all the time. But then from that, over that first couple of years, I kind of whittled it down, and I had about 250 people that were like the hottest buyers that I had. And then out of that, I had about 45 active buyers that had bought something from me. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so what I would do is I would text all of those people first. And I still do this. I text those people first. And I send a text something like, hey, I have a deal over in this zip code. Here's what the basic numbers look like. Are you interested? As long as I get 3 to 5 people who raise their hand and say, yeah, I'd be interested, send the rest of it. I then send a Google Doc. Back then, it was just a Word doc. I just text it to them, or I'd text them a link. I send it to them, and then they open it up, and then we would do a walkthrough and showing. A lot of the times I had a dispo guy at that point. So my dispo guy would go out there and walk it with them. And he'd walk through the house. They'd submit their offer, or we'd wait 24 hours and take all the offers and play it that way.
Yeah. So for everyone out there who's watching, this is why you want to be friendly with a wholesaler. Okay. You want to be that person they text and they call. You don't want to wait until you get on their list just to get on their list and get that email, because I've done it myself. And where I come up, I call a seller. Hey, how's it going? I got this deal over here. We're probably going to be selling it here, but I'm looking, hey, come take a look at it. Tell me what you think, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Click. I get it under contract. He says, okay, I get X amount of dollars. That's me making about 10, 15 grand. All right. Sold. I don't have to do any marketing.
Well,
Why
and,
not?
and here's another key point to what you said. So I have a buddy, his name's Marty Grisanti. He's out of New York. He's in Rochester. We run a podcast together. And really, really good guy. But one of the things he says when he wholesales, he brought a guy out to one of his properties and he's like, what can you buy for? And the guy's like, what are other people saying? He's like, I don't have anybody else. I'm just asking you. And the guy's like, what? He's like, no, bro, like this is a relationship. I got a couple of dudes. You're the only one who's seen this property. Like I'm giving you the opportunity. And the guy looked at him and he was like, dude, that's really cool. He's like, that's not normal. And the guy came back and told him what he was willing to buy it for, and he sold it to him. And what happens in that scenario now in a really hot market, sure, you might have been able to get it quite a bit more. But as the market softens, those guys who you've treated really well, they're going to turn around and they're going to treat you really well. And so if you can develop a relationship, guys, this is a relationship business. If you can develop a couple key relationships and you become friends, there's one buyer here in the Grand Rapids marketplace that that's one of the best buyers. And one of my good relationships is like best friends with this dude, right? Maybe not best friends, but they're pretty tight. And I know him. I have his phone number. We've talked on the phone. I've sold him properties directly. However, when I call this other dude and I'm like, yo, I got a deal that I think would be good for so-and-so, when he calls so-and-so, I get a better price every time. I get a better price every time. That dude will hit me at a lower price, but for his buddy, because his buddy's involved, even though he's getting a fee as well, I get a better price on the side. And so guys, don't let anybody tell you this isn't a relationship business. Buyers buy based on how they feel. Okay. Buyers might look at some numbers, but it's first, how do they feel about the deal? Are they confident? Is it their area? Do they want to do it? And then they'll justify it with the numbers. You know, what's that saying? It's like every man has two reasons why to buy something. The first reason is the one he really wants, and the second one is the one he justifies to his wife, right? It's the first reason. It's not always the numbers, guys. I know it might seem like that, but it's not. It's when they see the deal, how does that deal make them feel? This is why for so long, Randy, this is one of my biggest frustrations in this whole business. Sellers would get higher offers on their properties than I could wholesale them for. I didn't understand that from other buyers. And you know why? It's because when people saw the deal from a wholesaler, in their mind, wholesalers are unreasonable. Right? Wholesalers are unreasonable. They ask too much. They make up the numbers. They do this. But when it's the seller, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't want to lose this deal. I got the seller. It's blah, blah. And they'll bid it up. And they'll like, I'd make an offer and the seller would get an offer $18,000 more than mine from a buyer I know wouldn't buy it, or that wouldn't have bought a deal that was very similar over here because I sent it to him. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? It's that feeling. And so if you can replicate that, you can win. And that's why the relationship with the buyers is so important, because if you take care of them and you understand their buying criteria, then you can say, hey, I think this will fit, and they'll actually be open to listening to you. So absolutely, man.
So one thing I have a challenge for everyone who's listening to this right now. Not a lot of people are, but anybody who's watching this in the replay right now, I have a challenge for you. Okay. Find one buyer. That's all I'm asking. One buyer. Okay. Have a conversation with them, talk with them. What's their buy criteria? Don't blow smoke up their ass. Okay. Find out their buying criteria, find out where they're buying, what they want, and look for a property that matches that exactly. Okay. And then talk to sellers to be able to get something under contract. Now, do you have that one conversation with them and then go find it? No. Okay. It is a repeatedly have a conversation. Hey, what do you think about this property? Okay, great. I'm going to try to get it locked up for you. What do you think about this property? Okay, great. I'm going to try to get it for you. Okay. There's this one buyer that he's like, when I met him, he's like, okay, I want south of Hamtramck on the west side and blah, 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 multifamily. I'm like, okay. He gave me very, very not specific areas, but I'm like, okay. I sent him a deal. He goes, I know that's what I told you, but it's a little bit too rough. It's a little bit too north. Great. By the third property I brought to him, he was very interested, and I would have sold it to him, but there was a squatter in there that we couldn't really get out, so that deal ended up dying. But the fact is that I built a relationship. So now that when I call him, it only took me 3 times of calling him back, saying, hey, I got this deal. What do you think? I got this deal. What do you think? And every single time, because I've done that, he will answer my text. He will answer my call.
You know, that reminds me, I started a YouTube channel 3 weeks ago, right, Randy? And so I launched it.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So I launched the channel, and I'm throwing this content by some of my buddies before I post it. And what do you think? Hey, was this a good one? What do you think? And one of the guys is also a buyer in Fort Worth. He's a guy who also did private money for me. And I was like, hey, man, what do you think about this? And he's like, dude, one of those strategies, the video hasn't come out yet, but he's like, one of those strategies you mentioned in your how to buy real estate with no money. He's like, I didn't even know that was possible. And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, dude, why didn't you talk to me about that? I've bought a number of deals from you. I'll even buy sub 2 deals from you. Yeah. And I was like, man, it just never came up. I apologize. And so what happens is when you're talking to your buyers, it also gives you an opportunity to educate them, because when I was in Detroit speaking at the event where we met, I was talking to a guy there, and he was kind of talking about his W-2 and what his goals are and the mastermind group he's part of. And I shared a creative strategy with him. He's like, bro, no one has ever talked to me about this, about using his W-2 and how to use it effectively while he has it. Guys, that's your buyers, people who are investing in real estate. They want to make money. That's why they're doing it. And so if you're wholesaling and if you're creating relationships, it gives you an opportunity. And guys, people who are buyers, my buyers were the first people outside of my friends and family who became my private lenders. The guys who were doing big volume, right? One of the guys I think he bought like 18 properties from me or something like that in like a 1.5 year period. He was like, hey man, if you buy something, I get money at 10%, if you just pay me a point, I'll lend it out to you if you got something, that you want to do. Like, it was just a relationship. It was a conversation. And we were talking about a deal, and it came up, and all of a sudden he's willing to lend me money because I've made him a bunch of money. And so there's this aspect when you start making people money, specifically relationships, more than once or twice or 3 times, that person wants to do more business with you. And this is an amazing, amazing business to do that in. And so guys, do what Randy said, go out there, look at, find the buyers, talk to them, and then reverse engineer it. Find those areas, market, and kind of get to know what it looks like, and do some deals.
Most definitely. So, real quick, Ivan asked, can we share our YouTube channels in the messages? Look, Ivan, look in the description. My YouTube channel is there. Links to Ronald's YouTube channel is there, and everything. So go ahead and click in the description.
Absolutely. If you just go to YouTube, type Ronald Walker. I won't be the first one right now. Eventually I will, but I will. I am right under that. You'll see my face and my brand, and you can jump on there, man. But just
how many subscribers are you at right now?
Like 113, not a whole lot.
Okay. Well, that's awesome, because you still got more than me. I got 47 subscribers. So
nice.
Happy to have that. And then Dave S from YouTube. Dave S from YouTube. I really appreciate you. You came and followed me from Pace Morby Show. I appreciate you. Awesome. So, but he wanted to ask a question, how we go into detail and how we come up with an offer price. Okay.
That's a
And
that's a
real
great
quick,
question. Go ahead.
I want to answer this real quick before you do, and then I want to get your opinion, Ron.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
This, because we were talking about relationships, okay? This is exactly why we do this, okay? Because we talk about relationships, guess what I do? I go to my buyer and I say, what would you pay for this? Okay. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but if it's a buyer I trust that I know they're not going to go behind me, shoot them the photos. What do you think? You know, we're right. I give them a roundabout price where we kind of need to be. Maybe shoot it up a little bit, you know. But my buyers know that I want all feedback. Okay. Just because you lowball me doesn't mean I'm going to sit there and say no. I want to know why you lowball me. I want to know why you're here and not here. Okay. Or why you're here and not here. Okay. So that I can learn throughout this whole process. All right. That's how I gain the knowledge from in all the different areas and by listening to my buyers. Okay. So how I usually come in, I listen to what my buyers are saying on all the different type of areas and all the different types of deals. Now, with that being said, I do look at the comps, and I've been doing 70% minus repairs in the suburbs, but in Detroit, it's almost 50%. Okay. And even then, there's some areas that it doesn't even do that. So it really, because I'm unique to Detroit, where it's I just kind of look at something and I kind of know what other buyers are paying. That's, you know, it's kind of weird like that, but Detroit is a block by block area. So
Right.
I'll let you answer now, Rado. Sorry.
No, you're good, Randy. And I think his question, it's a couple fold in my mind. It's not quite that simple.
Right.
And here's why. It's because running comps is a science mixed with an art. And it depends on the area. So I'll give you an example. Today, I called a buddy of mine, an investor out of Kalamazoo, and we were just BS. And I was just catching up with him, just one of my rounds to connect with relationships. And we get off the phone in like 20 minutes. He's like, hey, man, do you have a buyer for 42 acres in Reed City? And I was like, maybe. I have a guy that has said that he farmland, he said, or 72 acres, not 42, it was 72. And I said, you know, what's the cost, cost per acre? He gave it to me. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine, and the guy who said he buys farmland, and I just sent it to him. I said, hey, are you interested in 72 acres in Reed City? It's farmland. They do corn, has a little bit of woods. There's no wetlands, blah, blah, blah. And he immediately was like, I'm interested. Can you send it to me? So I got it, and I connected the deal. So to answer your question, in some circumstances, absolutely. Like, reach out to your buyer and figure it out. And initially, if you don't know how to value prices or know what people are going, that's a great way to kind of learn, right? And kind of get the information. However, what I like to do, if you're in a city location or where there is quite a bit of activity, is if you go to the MLS and you pull all the data from the last 6 months, you can create what's called a pivot table. Now, you guys can Google how to do this, okay? But if you create a pivot table, you can create a pivot table based on 3 categories. Well, it's based on one category when multiple factors, but you can say, hey, I want to create a pivot table based on finance type. And you can see the average sales per zip code for conventional, FHA, and cash. And so you can see literally the MLS prices per zip code on the different financing type for the MLS. Well, this will give you a good picture. And then you can also, if you're techie enough, you can set it in there where you can select the number of bathrooms or bedrooms and bathrooms. So you can say 3 beds with the 3, and it'll tell you. And so you pull all the data from the MLS, you export it into an Excel sheet, and then you create a pivot table. Well, what this will allow you to do is if you do this once a quarter, every 3 months, because real estate trends in quarters, you pull the data, which you can get from a real estate agent. You might have to coach them a little bit. You pull it, you put it into a pivot table. Well, now you have a 3-month running average of what the cash sales are per zip code. And this gives you a really good picture of, hey, what would this one sell on average? So if you see a deal, initially you can see if it's under that marker from a very quick standpoint. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh,
and then as you get to know your area, you're going to know, yo, in Coopersville, if I see a deal, under 100,000, I want to buy that. Right. You just immediately, eventually you'll see it. But initially, if you have that broken down through zip code, you have the averages, it comes under a number, you'll know, hey, I should at least take a look at that. Yep. From there, I like to dig in, and then there's the normal comp rule, right? 3 properties, what that looks like. And then you can do the 70% rule. Yep. I don't per se like the 70% rule. I think it's a good starting point, but I think it's a good starting point for people who don't understand what makes a good investment. Yeah. And the more that I've kind of advanced as an investor, I think that buyers use that more against wholesalers now than the flip side. And the reason why is like, dude, I'm looking for a deal at 70 cents, right? Or 72 cents or so. They're not actually thinking about, I mean, they are, but they're pushing wholesalers on this simple formula, knowing that it benefits them on the backside. It might be a $52,000 deal that they're going to make with a fairly simple rehab, but they're like, dude, it's not 75 cents, 72 cents, or 70 cents. It's like, bro, you're going to make 50 grand. What are you talking about? You're not going to buy this deal. And so it's good to understand what I like to look at. Hey, what are the flips going for? What are the minor flips going for? And what are the as is very similar to your property going for? And in Michigan, it's really easy because everything's public. In Texas, things weren't public. So it was very hard to find that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what I like to do now and really get a feel for the market. And then what is the investment returns, right? What's the cash on cash return look like? What's the rental rate look like? How much cash flow are they going to do? How much money are they going to bring out of their pocket? What's the nugget on the backside, best case, worst case, and anticipated for them? And, I've got a calculator that I've had for years that a buddy and me created. He created most of it and he gave it to me. And he's not in the business anymore. But if you go to my website at ronaldwalker.com, you sign into the Enter 4, just completely free. I got a calculator there. If you download that calculator and the free resources, it goes through the 3 scenarios and a full picture on how to analyze a deal. So I hope that helps you guys.
Oh, most definitely. So now, with that being said, in this market and how much it's changing and how we're doing that, most of my prices are actually going to be about cash flow and not really ARV centric. Right. Yes, I want the ARV to be there, but it's going to be concentrating more on cash flow because most of the buyers that are buying right now, very little are flips. Okay. There are flips. People are still doing flips. But very little of them are. And so usually they're buying holds. And so you got to know your buyer. Is your buyer doing a buy and hold where he's going to refinance it out almost immediately? Is he going to leave his money in there until the rates come down? Okay. How is he going to do that versus, so know your buyer as well and what kind of cash flow you can get on your property.
Randy, I think what you're talking about is so key right now. And I've seen the exact same thing in mine is that the guys who are buying for a very long time, it was the flippers. Right? It was the flippers were the buyers, the flipper, make sure the equity's there. They're going to sell it over market. Boom, boom, boom. Trading properties, right? Basically day trading properties. I'm seeing very similar that the guys who are buying, I was talking to a guy, he's like, yo, this is a really weird market. which it is. If you're here in the last couple of years, it's weird to you. It's not weird when you look at the history. Guys who've been around since the 80s, it's not weird to them. It's just a different cycle. And so what I'm finding right now is the guys who are buying are the guys who are holding. And the reason why is cash flow will maintain. Rents don't really go down. Historically, if you look at them, rents don't really depress. They just stay the same or they keep going up. And so,
agree.
Right. And so people are buying assets right now that will rent well. And they're judging that based on what they can get the interest rate. Is it a location they want to buy? Think of it this way. Guys who are out there, when you're buying property, there are certain locations that are just good locations, right? That are just, they're not making any more of them. Let's put it that way. I'm buying a brick Tudor style cottage. Actually, I close on November 10th, 1.8 miles from the beach in Grand Haven.
Oh my God.
It is. And I'm getting it at a good deal.
Yeah.
Like I'm holding that property. It's a freaking incredible. They're not making any more of these. Okay.
No.
It's like legit. It has old character. It looks like a Tudor style building from, the Edwardian days. I mean, it's a really nice home. Things like that, guys, in certain areas, there's not any more of them. They're not going away. It is a hot area. And so understanding that there's certain types that people want to hold. And here's what I found over the years. For a long time, I thought it was just about profit, and it still is greatly about profit, but it's also about, think of, people want to be proud. One of the biggest reasons people move into multifamily, Randy, is they want to be proud of their asset.
Yeah.
People give and become a limited partner in these multifamily deals with very little cash flow. They get more cash flow by lending me the money, right? They give me 40 grand. I'm going to give them, right? Like we're going to be able to turn. I'm going to be able to make them more money than putting that.
Yeah.
But there is pride in saying, I own that. I own that storage unit. I'm part of that. There's pride. And so if you can find properties and negotiate good deals on properties that people will be proud to own, this is so powerful. That's why subject to and owner financing and creative financing is so powerful right now. Is you can pick up a $500,000 property and cash flow $800 a month, and people are proud to own this property because it's a legit asset.
Yeah, 100%. So we kind of got on a tangent, but I love it. I love this. So I want to come back. What are you doing in your business right now? I'm sure you're still wholesaling. I'm sure you're still doing some flipping, and I'm sure you're still, so tell us what you're doing right now in your business.
So yesterday, not like yesterday, but yesterday as in before rates started going higher. Okay. The focus was, let me solve any major problems in my business. Let me figure out the strategic direction we want. And what's today's revenue? Focus on today, get the money today as fast as possible. Okay. Since the market has shifted, this is what I'm focused on. I'm focused on raising funds so I have the capital when opportunities come across, right? This is managing my private money, managing my cash, managing the amount that I have available to make sure I can ride and that I constantly have that, and just watching that number like a hawk. And number two is I am very heavily managing deal flow. And so when you talk about what is your plan? Are you wholesaling? Are you doing sub two? I'm transitioning more into the creative financing. Like I want to do creative finance deals. If you guys are out there and are wholesalers and are running into these properties where people own a lot, I can help you with those dead leads. Like I can help you close those, and I want to close more of those properties. But for me, it's about deal flow. It's about cash flow. Yes, I'm still wholesaling. I'm trying to taper off my flips. I've got 6 of them going right now. I might end up holding a number of them. I was just exploring today with my one of my finance guy to look at the numbers on holds. But today is all about consistency and deal flow. And if anybody tells you anything different, you know, I would just say that they need to readjust, because you need to make sure deals are coming in. You need to make sure your marketing is consistent, because your cash on cash conversion cycle from the time you spend money to the time you receive money is getting longer. And it's getting longer because it's harder to find a deal. You're having to put more effort into a deal. You're having to put a lot more energy to get it at the price you need it. And then when you turn around and sell it, it's harder to sell it. And so what's happening from the time you spend that first marketing dollar, at least me, from the time I spend that first marketing dollar to the time I receive a wholesale fee is actually longer than it was before. And so my primary focus right now is managing and making sure that I have the leads on a daily basis, is making sure that I have the number of conversations that need to happen on a daily basis in my system, and that they don't drop. Because if they don't drop, that means it's taking me longer to make more money. Right. And so that, when you talk about like, what is my chief focus in order to thrive, I need to make sure my deal flow doesn't drop. And that means I got to focus on 2 things. I got to focus on my intake of leads and increasing them, and my ability to have strong conversations with the sellers and seller direct. And then third, and this is one of the reasons I'm so excited about pushing the content out right now and even doing this, is, guys, you know, the people who are winning are the people who are going to band together and do deals together. Right. Yes. When you guys reach out to Randy, I mean, his phone number is right there. If you reach out to Randy and you're like, hey, how can I maximize this deal? You're going to band together and you're going to win. Those one-man bands who are prideful and off on their own, they're not going to win. They're going to struggle. They're going to have a hard time. But the investors who come together, when the community comes together and we do deals together, we're going to win. That could be subject to, that could be leveraging my expertise or Randy's expertise in a specific area or another guy. And as we come together, we can partner on deals. People can get paid out in monthly increments rather than just a full wholesale fee. We can get creative. There's lots of different elements that can happen so we can maximize this time. And it just brings us all together. The question is, are you prepared, and are you willing to reach out? And are you willing to have half of a watermelon instead of a whole grape? Because if we work together, we can accomplish more and we can do more deals. And so that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, 100% agree. And that's where I focused a lot of, by creating this group, I focused a lot of, let's get everyone together to help each other out. If you use me, great, use me. Okay. That's what I'm here for. And how I get my fee is by all means, by JVing with you guys, but I'm not going to not help you if you don't JV with me.
Right.
You know? So, you know, with that being said, most of my leads come through JV deals. Right now I'm working on getting my system set up at the moment, getting my CRM, things like that. Speaking of which, a little bit of selfish question. What CRM are you using at the moment?
I have a custom made Podio.
Okay, awesome.
So
that's actually what I'm going to be getting is
nice.
I have a Podio. It's just taking me too much time to set it up myself, and time is money at the moment. So.
Yeah, no, Podio is the way, at least for me, Podio is the way I go. I've used Podio for a long time. I finally got the custom one that I wanted built about 4 years, maybe a little less, maybe 2.5 years ago. And it's pretty sweet.
Awesome. And then Dave S is asking, what are you using to get your leads?
So Dave, here's what I recommend. Cold calling is the number one way to get consistent income of leads. If you hire a cold caller, I use call motivated sellers. They're very expensive. They're in US callers. They're $22 an hour. They call 4 hours a day. Okay. They're fairly expensive per caller,
Yep.
but they've been qualified for 5 years or more. That's who I use. That will give you an influx. Just one will give you an influx of 2 to 4 leads a day. If you get 3 of them, just do the math, right? You'll have 6 to 10 leads a day. That'll create
How many hours a day are you having them do that?
4 hours a day each.
Okay.
I have 2 right now, so I have 8 hours a day of calling. Okay.
Gotcha.
I just fired my 3rd one, and we're looking for another one. So cold calling, number 1. It creates consistency. Then I do text messaging as well. And then I do very tailored direct mail. Here's a tip, since you're still on here, Dave. Your direct mail, when you skip trace your list, you skip trace the list, it's going to come up with a whole bunch of phone numbers. At the bottom of that list, there's going to be a whole bunch of records that do not have phone numbers. That is who you direct mail. Okay. You direct mail the people that do not have phone numbers at the bottom of your skip trace list, because they are not getting called. Okay. From there, once you send them into cold calling, whenever you get a deal, if you're doing it virtually, awesome, do it virtually. But if you go in person, get there 30 minutes early and drive the neighborhood, get the app Deal Machine on your phone, and drive the neighborhood and take a picture of at least 5 properties per appointment that you do. If you've got an acquisition coordinator, have your acquisition coordinator do it on the app, and you'll get 5 driving for dollars leads for every appointment you go on, which will plug into your system, which are not on any list. And then the third thing I would say, bro, if you're struggling for deals, this is a ninja move. I've taught quite a few newbies to do this. The ninja move is call the city. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Detroit or where you're at. Call the city, figure out the trash routes. Okay. Once you figure out the trash routes, go out on trash night and drive that route, whatever that is. And every house that does not have a trash can out, take a picture with the Deal Machine app and mark it to them or cold call them. The reason why is they didn't put their trash out. Yeah, they might live there. They might be on vacation, but they might be vacant too. And there's no other indicator showing that it's vacant. It's a really, really good strategy. And if you want a 4th one, if you want to do internet driving for dollars, do the Google Street View. This works for virtual markets like Phoenix, Texas, hotter areas, Florida. Look at on the map from the top view. Look at the houses with a pool in the background. But from the top view, the pool will be empty. And so you'll see ones where it's blue because there's water. You'll see other ones where the pool is actually empty, or it's dark, or it's like green. Write those addresses down and hit them. Those are fantastic ways to get deals right now, today, in the market. But for me, it's cold calling, it's text messaging, it's direct mail. And then every time we go on an appointment, we grab 5 addresses around it and we hit them.
100% agree with you on that. It's cold calling is the way to go. I started off cold calling myself, and then I went to a VA, and I got a VA from the Philippines.
Nice.
And now the thing about me is that I will train somebody. If I see them progressing, they're staying with me. Okay. And so I've had one cold caller that was with me constantly and I trained her, and I was with my business partner at the time. And this is the reason why I don't have a CRM yet, because I had a CRM with business partner. I left the business partner, left him, and he wasn't doing his part. So I just kind of stepped away. And so he kept the CRM, he kept the business, he kept all of that. And, he got rid of the cold caller, and I still keep tabs with her. And I'm like, hey, as soon as I get going, you're hired, because I know she knows how I want to talk. I've trained her myself, and she takes feedback and constructive criticism very, very well.
Yeah.
So just, she may have an accent, but I tested this with Philippine, I tested a woman and a man. And even though a man is nice, smooth talking, people still resonate with a woman a lot better. Okay, more feminine touch, they're more willing to speak to a woman cold caller that is from the Philippines. Not to say that a man cold caller from the Philippines won't work. It's, of course they will. It's with my testing, that's what I found out.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I think a woman disarms people a little bit more than a man does. And so I agree. I agree with you on that. So very good stuff, man. That's awesome.
all right. So with that, what are you doing in the future? Okay. So we already talked a little bit about it. Okay. But I know you're looking to do private money. By the way, anybody out there who I've come across deals all the time, and I'm always looking for private money lenders to finance my deals that I want to go into. So I haven't taken down any of these deals yet myself. But I'm always looking for people who are interested in financing my deals. Okay, whether that be multifamily, single family, or just a quick flip or a quick hotel. So anything like that, hit me up, let me know. But back to you. What are you doing going forward?
Right now, going forward, we're transitioning to creative deals. I'm partnering with more wholesalers to help them close their creative deals. And I've got a structure there to help that work. And so that's what we're really pivoting into is those creative deals. I'm creating more relationships with some other guys, especially wholesalers who are really struggling right now. I got two things that I do to help them. One, I've gotten a pretty good dialed in marketing system. And so I have a thing that I call investor launch, right? Where I'll work together with them. And then I'm getting ready to launch things on how do you do creative? How do you buy wholesale deals? How do you work with buyers? How do you do that conversation with the sellers? And so I'm in the process of launching that, and it's going really, really well. On the other side is wholesalers are coming in and guys who are struggling with the marketing, who don't have the money to do it, don't have that. I'm essentially allowing them to come in, showing what that looks like, and then splitting deals with them for allowing them to run some of my leads if we're overwhelmed or my system's not there. Because follow-ups, I found that follow-up's key, right? And right now I've got 4,000 leads in my system. And so part of the game is just follow up, right? And 3 people following up with 4,000 leads. I mean, it takes a long time. And so that's those are the things I'm doing. I'm trying to connect with more investors. I'm trying to help more investors out. I believe that as there's more wholesalers, investors, people who are creative, and if I help them along the journey, I want to create that community where we're bonded together and we're forging ourselves to win in this market, because I believe that these are the times that make the most millionaires. The Great Depression made the most millionaires for people who were prepared, people who knew the strategies, and people who partnered with the right people. And so for me, if you guys are struggling, like, reach out, go watch my free stuff, go to my YouTube. I got a whole bunch of free stuff on talking to sellers, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And if you want my help, I'd love to be able to help, set you up in launching, get into the community. And if not, just take the knowledge as much as possible, sharpen yourself, learn and apply that, because the people who are diligent, the people who do the things that they don't want to do, the people who have a long-term vision are going to win. The people who are distracted by today and who are scared and are stuck in the mud, those are the people who are going to fail. And I don't want to see you fail, but you're failing because you're not prepared. You're not around the right people. You don't have the right strategies. It's not because you're not a hard worker. It's not because you're not learning and improving. It's simply because the market's changing and the things that worked yesterday do not work today. And so get around the people, whether it's Randy's group, whether it's the stuff I'm doing, whether it's someone local, get around people who are going to do something big and connect with them. And the people you're around and you listen to, steal nuggets from them, do deals with them, work with them, pay them, so that way you can capture a part of the wealth that they create. And man, it's an exciting time. It's a very scary time for some people. There's a lot of people who are scared. But if you're prepared, you have the right strategies, you're willing to do the work, and you're constantly learning and growing, you will win. The question is, are you doing that? And if you're not, and you're not confident, and you're scared, and you're struggling, reach out. That's all I can say. Reach out.
100% agree with you. Reaching out to people to figure out what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and how to move forward. So one thing that I also do for new people, anybody, and this goes for anybody who's listening out there, I will actually get on the phone with your seller and help negotiate and figure out where they're at, with the deal. I may not even give them an offer price right then and there, and just try to figure out where they're at and what they're doing while you're on the phone, while you can listen, and that way you can learn. And then after the call, we'll break it down, and figure out why I said what I said, things like that. I found that by doing things like that, you teach by doing.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit here and be a guru and say I know everything, because I don't. I know what I've done in the past 2 years, and I know what I can do to help other people. And that's all I'm trying to do, So and I'm trying to learn something while I'm doing as well, because like I said, and I said this in the beginning, every single deal that I do, I learn something new from. Okay. I'm pitching more creative deals now, even though I've never done a creative deal. I'm pitching creative deals, and every time I pitch it, I become more confident on how to pitch it. Okay. Now I will do one, even though I haven't done the paperwork for one yet. I will do one. So
it's not that hard. It's just a matter of getting the seller to agree, and then stepping forward, man. It's awesome. That first one, like you said, it's the proof of the concept.
Correct. And Dave, bless you. And Dave, you said, am I only looking in Michigan? I only deal deals that I can physically go to at the moment. I don't do virtual, because this is the market that I know, and I don't pretend to know something without doing more research. Now, that's not to say I won't turn down a deal that comes to me, say an apartment deal or something like that, as long as I do my proper due diligence. But at the moment, I just look at the Tri-County area, Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne County at the moment. So, because I know those counties, I grew up in this area. I know it like the back of my hand.
Nice.
So.
That's awesome. Dave, if you're outside of the state or something, I've done deals all over the country, in like 10 states. I'll look at it depending on the area. So if I don't know where you're at, but depending on where it's at, I'll consider it and look at it. And if I'm not interested, I've got a pretty good network all over the country. And so we can help you out one way or another. Just reach out if you have something.
He lives in Wisconsin.
I actually know a girl in Wisconsin. She's a freaking baller. I actually interviewed her on my podcast. It's not out yet. But she's doing really, really big things. So if you got a deal in Wisconsin or you're looking for stuff, she's incredible. So, and through her and through my network, I could probably reach out. But if you got something, just reach out, man.
Awesome. And he said that it was because I was mentioned for people to fund, and that's the reason why he was asking that. So I really appreciate it. If I don't say anything, nobody's going to come across and do anything. So that's awesome. Now, with this market and with these, I see so many new wholesalers coming in right now and thinking that this is a quick buck. It's a quick thing to do, and they want to get started, and they're going to be able to make money right away. And unfortunately, it's usually a disappointment. And what I've been finding out is that it's a lot of people, they're wanting to buy, to wholesale on market properties. Okay. And nothing against Jerry Norton. Love Jerry Norton. He's from this area. But he promotes the double dip strategy, doing on market deals. Now, I don't know where it is everywhere else. I just know what my buyers look at, and my buyers don't really like to buy on market stuff, at least close to the list price. And what is your opinion on that?
I agree. I agree for the most part. There are times where, I'll give you an example. I had a buddy of mine reach out to me to buy a deal that was 10 minutes from my house. And I was super interested in it. I went over there, but he said it was a 3-1. It was really just a 1-1 with two little, like it wasn't something I wanted to jump into.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, I said no. Well, like 10 days later, he's like, hey, a deal just popped up on the market that's cheaper than the other one. My buddy locked it up. Are you interested? And I went and looked at it, and I was interested. And so there are those scenarios, right, where people will list it on the market because they have a relationship with an agent, and the agent will put it up for cash. You just got to know it's a deal, right? It's got to be a deal, and there's got to be a reason it's a deal. And it's really got to fit the criteria. And if you can do that, then yes. But remember what I said earlier? I said a lot of buyers turn away because of the way they feel about it. The on-market thing is exactly that. You put a deal on market, and a lot of people turn away from the off-market world. And so if you buy things on market, it's just really got to be a deal. I agree with you. If the deeper under list price you can get, the better, right? If they look it up and they see a list price for 150 and you're pushing it to them at 112, they're going to be way more interested than if you're pushing it to them at 143.
Correct.
And so absolutely, I agree with you. Again, you might have found a nugget. And if you do, you got to catch whoever your buyer's attention with that nugget. If you realize, yo, this is a crazy cash flow area, like this deal is a duplex or a triplex and it's going to cash flow and it's a rock star and blah, 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 blah. Just make sure it really is. And if it is, then you'll be able to sell it. But if it's not, you might have it done.
100% agree with you. As long as it's a deal, but most of the time, I've done this where I say, okay, I'm not going to knock that it's on market. Okay, you got it for this price. You think, and I'll use these wholesalers' numbers against them because I'm like, I don't know. I haven't looked at the property yet. Okay. So I don't know. I'm just going by your numbers. Let's do the math.
Right.
All right. Now, I know it's an arbitrary number, the ARV, blah, 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 this, that, but we use it as a starting point at the moment. And I always use the 70% rule, maybe 75%, depending on the area. If it's Metro Detroit, you may be able to do the 75% depending on how further away from 8 Mile it is.
Right.
Okay. So I do the math and at what we can sell it to a buyer minus the repairs that they calculated in, they were still over by 10 grand. And I'm like, it's not a deal because you still got to make your fee.
Yep. Now the flip side to this, Randy, is if it's a creative deal. If they can pick up a creative deal on market, I bought my house that way. So the house I'm in right now, it was on market. It was on market for over 200 days.
and I bought it creatively, and it's a freaking sweet house. This house is incredible. That's the kicker, is if you have longer days on market and you can negotiate a creative deal, yeah, I'm all in.
The creative deal is all about, let's talk about that real quick, okay? And anybody who's staying here at the end, okay, you're gonna get some big ass nugget right here, all right? Because I'm asking these questions my selfish reason, and you guys are gonna love it, all right? So, with the creative deal, what are the most important things, okay? All right. And what are the main points that you have to get across so to make it a deal and so that you can sell it?
Yeah. So on a creative deal, there's 3 factors. Factor number 1 is how much income can the property bring? Okay. What is the income? So you got to figure out what the income is. What is your input into that deal? The second factor is what is the output, right? So you've got the input of a payment and you've got an output of a payment, and what is the difference, right? That is your cash flow. That is the most important part of the deal. The third element is you're looking at not necessarily equity, but you're looking at how much cash you have to bring to the table to get into the deal. Okay.
Yep.
So money in, money out, cash to the table. Those 3 things are all that matter. Then it's just your structure, right? Do you control the deal but not own it? Do you own the deal and are you wrapping it and creating a note? Are you doing an executory contract? Are you doing, something that is a little bit more creative where you're doing like a master lease, or you're doing some sort of, strategy that way where you're fulfilling an obligation first before you buy it? There's different ways to structure it. But the chief thing you're looking at is how much money you're bringing in, how much money you're sending out, and how much money you bringing to the table to get in the deal. And if those things match up, you're good. If you bring no money to the table, you have no money for 2 months, and you have an income of $1,700 a month, and then it switches to an income of $700 a month, that's pretty sweet. That's a pretty sweet deal. You bought it for no money, right? You've just taken over the debt or whatever that looks like. You had no payments for 2 months for a variety of reasons. There's ways to do that. And then it dropped to a $700 cash flow. What if you did a little bit of work to the property, got it up nice using that money, use that $2,000, and then you turned it into an Airbnb and it made you $47,000 a year? Right. That's a pretty cool strategy.
Now, Dave was asking, can you tell me about the creative deal on your house? If you're open to sharing that, that's up to you.
No, absolutely. So the house was listed for $425 on the market. And I walked through it, and the guy said, I'm not interested in land contracts. I'm not interested in owner financing. I had a realtor. I talked to his realtor, and they're absolutely not interested in the deal. I explained my situation. I explained that at that time when I bought the house, I couldn't get bank financing because I just moved up here. I'd switched to a new market. I had different things going on. I was like, however, I can bring $100,000 down. And that opened up. They're like, okay, $100,000 down. Usually people want to put as little money down. It's like I told you, we make really good money. This is my business. This is what I look at. And then I showed them what they would make on interest on their property over time. And what I like to do, I'll drop a little nugget here, is I like to call it the Warren Buffett model. And when you drop language like that, it grabs people's attention. And so that's what I did. I said, a lot of smart investors are using the Warren Buffett model when they sell their house. I found out they had 4 properties. All of them were vacation properties. And they loved this house and they wanted a maximum return. And that's why they didn't sell it. And so I played into that. I said, well, you can do what Warren Buffett does. And I laid out the numbers. I laid out what it looked like. And I negotiated 0% on the deal. Then they came back
before closing, and they saw that it was 0% and they wanted 5%. And I negotiated down to 4%. And I brought 100 grand to the table. My payment is $14.75 a month. And that's the deal. And so I got it cheaper than most rentals. I had to bring 100 grand to the table, but I'm living in a house, guys. This house is 5,000 square feet. My office here is probably 900 square feet. My whole basement, it's maybe not 900. It's maybe like 800. The whole basement down here is 1,400 square feet. It's bigger than most people's houses. I got a library upstairs. My in-laws are living with us. We have a big enough space there. We have a huge kitchen. We have a top upstairs. And behind me, there's 5 acres from a rest home behind me. We can just use the 5 acres to walk. And I'm walking distance from a 400 acre nature preserve that I walk in the summer. I walk almost every day. But here's the thing. And so you ask, like, well, why wasn't it selling on market? It's a legit deal. The closest comp in the neighborhood, guys, the closest comp in the neighborhood was 340. So I paid 425 because I love the house. I love the area. It fit me perfectly. I bought the house for $1,400 a month, 100 grand down, but I paid $80,000 more than the area. Why? Because this is my personal house and we want to live here and we like what's around us. And it's an incredible, it's probably the best house in the neighborhood, in my humble opinion. And I think most people would say it is. And so when you look at stuff like that, just look for those unique angles. So that's my personal house. That's how we found it. That's what we did.
Now, you touched on something before and you said an executory contract. Okay. Now, for most people, they may over here who are just beginning, they don't know what an executory contract is. And we know it by a different term. And that other term is land contract.
Yes.
Okay. So explain a little bit what you think, not what you think, what your opinion is on the difference between a land contract or an executory contract versus doing a regular seller finance where the deed transfers over to your name.
Yeah. So a land contract, basically the way it works is when you buy, I think the easiest way to do this is when you buy a car, right? When you go and you buy a car, what happens is that deed does not transfer into your name. The person who owns the car or the dealership, they hold on to that deed and you never get it. Okay. Now you get a contract that you have to fulfill in order to get the deed. So what you're doing is, and you guys can Google this and figure it out, but what you're doing is you're entering into an agreement that I'm going to buy this property and I'm promising to buy. You're giving me what's called a land contract, a contract that states that when I fulfill the terms of it, I will get the deed. Mm-hmm. That gets put in place so that when that's fulfilled, then the deed will be transferred over to my name and I will receive that deed. When you buy on a seller finance deal, it's like going to Wells Fargo and getting a loan. Okay. The deed does transfer into my name. I have the deed and there is a note and a mortgage on the property that is a security instrument. So there's benefits to both, okay, for both buyer and seller. So a land contract, when you buy it, it gives the seller security that they can get the property back quicker or that they're a little bit more in control, right? That it doesn't fully transfer into your name. However, if the seller was to transfer it into your name and they were to hold back a note and a mortgage, they can actually sell that note and the mortgage. That's an asset that a lot of people aren't familiar with that they can get rid of. That was a huge part of my strategy is I would sell it and then I would sell the note on the back end and I would double dip on profits. But we're not going to get into that. That's an advanced strategy. But with a land contract or an executory contract, essentially what you're doing is I'm coming to Randy and I'm saying, hey, Randy, I'll buy your house. He says, okay. I say, hey, this is what the terms will be. When I fulfill those terms, then that house ownership will transfer into my name. But in the meantime, I have 100% control of this property. Do you agree for these terms? He says, yes. We enter into a contract that stays in escrow. And now I have to fulfill my terms of that contract in order to eventually become the owner. That's what that looks like.
Gotcha. Now, would you do if a seller, how would you explain the difference to a seller? Because they only know the term land contract.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you explain that to a seller to convince them to, because in my opinion, I want to do a regular seller finance where the deed transfers into my name because I want the depreciation, okay, on my taxes.
Yep.
And because I wholesale, I want to be able to write off the depreciation.
Yep.
All right. Now, with somebody who all they know is land contract because that's all that's spoken around, how would you explain the difference to them in order to, I don't want to say, I guess to be able to sell them on it.
Right. So what I do is initially in Michigan, so it's not like this in other places, but in Michigan, that's initially what people think. Oh, you mean like a land contract, right? That's literally the term I get all the time. Hey, you mean like a land contract, right? I don't disagree with them. I actually say, yeah, it's very similar to a land contract. That's exactly what I said. I was like, yeah, this is very similar to a land contract. There's a couple different ways to structure it to benefit you and to benefit me. Are you open to exploring what that might look like? And then what I do is from there, I say, hey, we can do it where the deed stays in your name and I have to fill the contract, or you can upgrade yourself to the bank and become like a Wells Fargo. Let me ask you, would you rather this be like an arm shake transaction where I'm promising to fulfill a contract and then it transfers? Or would you rather be like the institutions that make the most money and have the high rises downtown and actually be in the position of the bank? And then a lot of times they'll be like, well, it'd be cool to be the bank. What does that look like? And then what I'll do is I'll bust out my financial calculator and I'll do amortization. So that's how I do it. And I say, hey, on a lien on the property, you have first lien position, which means literally nobody else can take this property from you. You have to get paid off. There's nothing that can happen. Nobody can argue with you. You're just like a bank. You get paid first. Mm-hmm. And that's how I go down that conversation. And then they say, if they say, well, how is that different from a land contract? I tell them, I was like, hey, a land contract is not set up that way. A land contract is it stays in your name. You don't have a note and a mortgage on the property. And what happens is I have to fulfill the terms of this contract in order to get ownership. So let me ask you, would you rather just have this contract in place, or would you rather have the security that the banks do that all of Washington creates laws on to protect the richest people? Right. And so now what you're doing is you're showing them the benefit of why it's good to be the bank, because the bank does make the most money. And so that's kind of my trajectory when I'm trying to drive that wedge. Now, people ask, well, is it really beneficial? And the answer is it depends on the seller's goals. In Michigan, people are just more comfortable with the term land contract. But if you look at this Michigan state contract, there's another thing up there called a purchase money mortgage, right? That's very similar to a full transfer ownership. I wouldn't be able to walk through exactly what the purchase money mortgage means, but essentially it's very similar to a full transaction. And so you can bring that up and be like, hey, there's a land contract. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, but I'm not really familiar. And then what you do is you just kind of walk through that. And then me being from Texas, I usually just pull that to Texas language.
Gotcha. So we're about an hour and a half in here, and I don't like to make it that long, but you dropped some big nuggets and I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you coming on. Now, do you have any coaching program or anything like that?
Yeah. So if you guys are interested, really, I mean, start off with just some of my free stuff I've been pushing out there. Go to my website, check it out. I got a bunch of free content. Before I tell people like, yo, come and do that, I really want you to resonate, right? And I want you guys to get some value. And so, yes, I do. I've got some students. I've actually built 2 education companies in the past. This is not my first rodeo. I've helped other guys launch their stuff. I've helped other guys launch their YouTube channels to get to 20,000 subscribers, hundreds of thousands of dollars in education, all of that stuff. But really, with where it's at now, guys, go look me up. Look at my free stuff. If you're interested, I am building a community called the Forged to Win community. I'll help launch your marketing. I'll help launch your strategies. I'll help you set your strategies in place and talk to sellers, and talk about step 2. Those are my strengths. That's what I can walk you through.
Mm-hmm.
But first, go get some value from my free stuff. And if you resonate, reach out to me and we'll explore and see if it's a good fit or not.
100% agree. Honestly, I met Ron last week. Actually, it was the week before, and awesome guy. First time I ever met him, and we just clicked. That's just how it is. So we will definitely be doing some deals together. I promise you that. All right. Because I get some people ask me all the time, about Kalamazoo, about, over on the west side of the state, things like that. And I don't know that area. I don't pretend to know that area. But now that I got you in my back pocket, I'll bring them to you. So,
nice. That would be awesome, man. Well, this has been a ton of fun, Randy. Thank you for having me on. It's been my pleasure, bro.
No problem at all. So anybody who's out there who's looking, I have one last thing. If you want me to do a comping video, all right, leave a comment in there. I'll do a comping video about Detroit, Metro Detroit, on how I comp and what I do. And it'll basically be me sharing the screen, showing how I comp the area. And I do it the freeway. Redfin, nice. Zillow. I don't have access to MLS, PropStream and batch leads. They're great and all. But I do the freeway. That way we can all help each other out. So
I love that. That's awesome, man. Sweet.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Now next Monday, we're going to have somebody else on here. We're going to be talking more real estate. Make sure you come and join me, and see you on the next one. Let's all do deals together. All right.